You know, when we began this partnership that has been extremely successful 3 years ago, we didn't have an idea of how broken the relationship with human and nature was until we came up into 2020. And it's not just the COVID pandemic, which is, you know, a direct cause of this broken relationship, but everything else. And nowadays people come to realize that it is real. You know, we are definitely in the Anthropocene, where humans dominate and the human footprint is transforming the life supporting system. And you know, what we have seen in the last year in terms of forest fires is something that we need to really put a lot of attention and be extremely worried. In the north, you know, forest fires are basically produced by humans, by climate change and irresponsible activities. But in the tropics, forest fire is the best tool because it's very cheap to do land use change for agricultural commodity, particularly for cattle ranching. And this tendency will continue because of the climate conditions that are set there. So we got a new element here that we need to really address.
I think the important thing, perhaps from our side, to just let people know is that given that we represent some of the largest consumer goods companies in the world, we are taking a forest positive future very, very seriously. And so as a demonstration of that, yesterday, we actually officially launched the Forest Positive Coalition. So we have 17 companies involved, 17 companies being manufacturers and also retailers similar to the ones that I mentioned before, with a collective market value of $1.8 trillion. So obviously very, very sizable. So it's quite a big group of industry players, and hopefully those industry players will be able to make a big difference. And so what's their task? Their task is essentially to find a way to take and use collective action to accelerate efforts to remove deforestation, forest degradation and conversion from key commodity supply chains. Deforestation is obviously a big issue across everything, and we can't solve every single problem all the time for everyone around the world. So we try to tackle particular commodity supply chains to make a difference, and then from that maybe we can expand. And so we know that it's a big challenge at the moment, and we hope to use our collective influence to be able to change this.
On the private sector side, there is a growing recognition, as Carlos noted, around the nature loss being a business risk, the economics of it. And we see the private sector beginning to evolve sustainability ambition in line with the scale of the challenges. This started with companies setting science-based targets around climate that were in line with global ambition and linked to the commitments made by governments at the Paris Agreement. But as we've heard already today, with the launch of the Forest Positive Coalition, that there is a true recognition of the need to go beyond supply chains and to tackle systemic drivers of deforestation and conversion, and to do that in collaboration with government and other actors. It's no longer just about reducing footprint or being responsible, but truly seeking to solve global problems. But I'm constantly reminded of those worrying trends. And when we look at the statistics around deforestation, we know that our array of efforts to date has not been sufficient. There are limitations to what the private sector and the public sector can accomplish each alone, particularly with a wicked problem like deforestation. And so that's why it's a truly hopeful development in the past couple of years to have leading companies, including those we'll hear from on the panel today, starting to collaborate with government and other actors in producing regions on strategies to address the underlying drivers of deforestation and nature loss, and to have platforms that can support that collaboration.
We have 5 main objective on our National Action Plan: strengthening data, coordination, and infrastructure, improving smallholders' capacities and capabilities, and also we would like to do environment management and monitoring, and also plantation governance and conflict resolution, and also acceleration of new ISPO implementation and certification and improvement of market access. These 5 components of in our National Action Plan for Sustainable Palm Oil, we open to all of finance in terms of financing, assisting, or who will do all the job, and what kind of the initiative they would like to implement. The most important for us that all of the objection of this national action plan can be implemented, can be direct to grow our country in the sustainability way, because we are government cannot manage in only from the government, because we have so many limitations. Our country spread in many islands, and the palm oil grow in many area, remote area. So we need all of hand from the local government and also the private sector. That's why we, in this national action, we aren't limited only for the government, but this national action we asking for all stakeholders can join with us. What can we do to do this national action plan?
I strongly believe that just before the pandemic hit us, we were at a tipping point. We have examples in Indonesia, local governments, where we have found an equilibrium. There is civil society, private sector, and the local government, and there's been a change. There's been a realization that collaborating with the private sector doesn't mean reducing the value of the local government. And likewise for the private sector, collaborating with the government doesn't mean replacing the government. And we found then a better equilibrium where we said, what do we have to bring? We have some good extension work. We can support your extension services, benefit the local smallholders. The local government saw that as a massive positive at the time that they were trying to enforce stronger regulations on deforestation, on stopping deforestation. And they had also market recognition, because some of not even our own customers further down the chain also got involved through multi-stakeholder collaboration, through some initiatives, and they could bring that recognition. So it does exist. You have, and again, I'm saying that the matter is you have the higher level of the government, which has made the policies. You have the middle level of the government, the provinces, which also sees those policies, but the local level, they're the ones at the end of the day who need to implement, and who are facing the smallholders, and who are facing effectively the deforestation at their doorstep.
And for Ghana, we have realized that there should be different forms of partnership agreements that bring us together, because it's one thing building trust, it's another thing having a shared vision, it's another thing understanding each other's language, but then we have to move to a stage where we document everything and put on paper, because there are multiplicity of actors in there. So we have different partnership agreements that serve as entry points. It could be an MOU, it could be an action point, as you mentioned, Ruth, at the beginning, or Kerry rather, mentioning the action plans that we are developing with companies. So these partnership agreements are serving a great purpose, telling us what each partner has to do, what each partner has to bring to the table. They are measurable, and then they are also verifiable. Now, once you have the partnership agreements, then you get into coming up with structures, the enabling environment. For example, we are working with ProForest on developing engagement principles. What does it mean to engage in a cocoa, sustainably managed cocoa landscape with different actors? What are the engagement principles? What are the entry points? What do I have to look out for? What assessments? So we have different steps in there that are telling every partner what to look out for. And then we have moved another step further now to bring everybody together through different governance structures. And really that is the driving force of all that we are doing, because we are all from different constituents. But then governance arrangements are what really move us into the same direction, because when you talk about these governance structures as we have them in Ghana, they are multi-tiered, right from the community to the district to the subnational to the national level.
If what we're trying to do collectively is reverse nature loss while providing for livelihoods and prosperity of people, that is system change. It's going to require massive adjustments to practices, policies, tools, networks, relationships, resource flows, narratives, all of that. And as has already been said many times, nobody can do that alone. And that's the challenge. We have to have a collective vision. We need to act together. What we're trying to do as a retailer in the consumer space, we provide food for people, is make a connection between practical actions that business can take through sourcing and also actions through philanthropy and what needs to happen at landscape level in partnership with others, including government entities. And that's been the big shift in thinking in the consumer sector, is the realization that we now need to enhance and shift toward jurisdiction approach, landscape level initiatives. So what we've done at Walmart, a few years ago, we launched a platform called Project Gigaton, which has been about delivering results on emissions reduction across suppliers, across commodities, across countries. Our target has been focused on emissions so far. So 1 billion metric tons of emissions avoided by 2030. I'm happy to say we have 2,300 suppliers engaged, and we're supporting them, helping them make the case in their own companies, but also with tools to accelerate progress on emissions reduction through practical actions in energy, in waste reduction, in packaging, in product design, and through nature, forest projects, agriculture projects, and so on. We're now almost a quarter of the way there. So suppliers, 2,300 of them engaged, reporting 230 million metric tons emissions avoided. We want to bring that same practical mindset and impact to nature and to forests specifically.
You know, as we get more involved in the supply chains that we've decided we want to be part of our long-term sourcing plan, and get more involved with what's going on the ground, we often discover that, you know, sometimes you can't solve the problem you're trying to solve by looking at one commodity. You know, even in, you know, Rosalind talked about, you know, cocoa in West Africa, which is sort of the iconic crop, there's also palm oil, right? And so you need to bring that into the discussion as well. Similarly in Indonesia, where everyone thinks about palm oil, there's cocoa, right? And rubber and other things. And so that's where I think, you know, realizing that some of these problems, you actually have to make them bigger and think about the whole jurisdiction, the whole landscape, not just your crop, becomes the natural interface for working with governments who think about things in geographic terms. You know, whereas coming from the private sector, we tend to think of them in terms of the ingredients. And so I think that all really gets into this idea of, yes, we need to collaborate and we need to work together, but how we work together is almost more important. You know, we've all been saying many of the same things for many years, but not really leaning into supporting each other and driving these things, again, more like a peloton and less like a marathon. So.
I think there's a sort of growing agreement on the nature of the issue and a growing agreement on the importance of more collaborative systemic approaches at the landscape, jurisdictional, and national level, as well as the global and as well as the supply chain work that's been going on for many, many years. But there is a lot of learning to be done about how to do that effectively. And a lot of that is about, you know, learning how to be more effective working systemically and collaboratively, but also developing best practice tools, guidelines, etc. And that's the work that some of us who helped pull this call together have been doing over the past months and years.